Public transportation is built on a foundation of precision. Everything from schedules and signals to complex safety systems is designed to eliminate surprises. Trains, in particular, are creatures of habit. Their routes are documented, their stops are timed, and their every movement is tracked. This predictability is what makes them so reliable, and it's also why stories of trains that break these rules, that appear where they shouldn't be, are so deeply unsettling. This particular story takes place along a commuter rail line here in the United States, one of many that connect major cities to their sprawling suburbs. These lines often run late into the night, but after midnight, the service becomes sparse. The final trains of the evening are usually quiet, carrying just a handful of tired riders making their way home. According to the official timetables for this specific line, the very last train departed its terminal shortly after 12:30 a.m. What happened next is not part of any schedule. The man who witnessed it worked as a contract cleaner. His job was to maintain several of the smaller stations along the route, and his shift began only after all passenger service had officially ended for the night. He enjoyed the solitude, the no passengers bustling about. The stations took on an eerie, suspended quality. The platform lights hummed in the stillness, the benches sat empty, and the tracks stretched out into the profound darkness of the early morning. It was around 1:40 a.m., and he was just finishing his work at a minor stop, one so small that was rarely used even during the busiest parts of the day. The station's digital clock glowed with a steady light. No more trains were expected until dawn. That's when he heard it. It started as a low vibration, a faint hum traveling through the steel rails, barely perceptible at first. He initially dismissed it, thinking it might be a distant freight train on a nearby line, their movements often creating residual tremors. But the sound grew stronger, more rhythmic, and soon it was unmistakable. A train was approaching his station. He glanced up at the track signals. They were completely dark, as they should be. He instinctively took a step back from the platform edge just as a pair of bright headlights sliced through the darkness, growing larger and larger. The train emerged from the night, gliding smoothly along the tracks. Every single car was illuminated. The windows glowed with a warm yellow light, and through them, he could see rows of seated passengers. But the train didn't slow down. It passed straight through the station at full speed. There was no horn, no recorded announcement, not even a flicker of its lights. It just moved silently, like a phantom. He saw the passengers inside, but they didn't move. Not a single person turned their head, read a book, or looked at a phone. They were just still silhouettes against the warm light. He stood there, frozen, as the final red tail light of the last car disappeared back into the darkness. The humming sound faded as quickly as it had come, leaving the platform exactly as it had been moments before, perfectly still, quiet, and unchanged. He pulled out his phone, his hand slightly trembling. He checked for service alerts, delays, or any unscheduled maintenance runs. There was nothing. The next day, he reported the strange incident to his supervisor, feeling a little foolish as he did. The supervisor, trying to be helpful, checked the official system logs. The data was clear. No trains, scheduled or otherwise, had run on that section of track at that time. At first, the explanation seemed simple and logical. It must have been a case of misidentification. The long freight train, seen at a strange angle at night, could easily be mistaken for a passenger train. The reflections off empty seats and windows could create the illusion of occupied cars. And of course, fatigue can play powerful tricks on human perception, especially when you're working alone in the middle of the night. All of these were perfectly reasonable explanations, but the cleaner wasn't the only one. Over the next several months, similar stories began to surface, whispered between night shift workers at different stations along the very same line. A security guard on patrol claimed to have seen a fully lit train blast through his station, at nearly the same time, always well after the last scheduled service had ended. A maintenance worker described hearing the faint, ghostly echo of a station announcement, even though he knew for a fact that the speaker system was powered down. None of these accounts were ever formally documented. They existed in the spaces between official reports and quiet conversations during shift changes, in shared knowing looks and in an unspoken collective understanding. The details were always strikingly consistent. The train never stopped. Its doors never opened. Its passengers never stood up. One of the more unsettling, though unverified, accounts came from a station attendant who had worked the line for over 20 years. He claimed he actually recognized some of the faces inside the train. They weren't exact matches, he said, but they were familiar outlines, familiar postures. He described it as watching a memory speed pass him on the tracks, a collection of all the commuters he'd seen day after day, year after year. Rail experts, when presented with these kinds of stories, often point to logical phenomena. They explain how empty, illuminated train cars moving at speed can create powerful optical illusions, making them appear full. They talk about how track vibrations can carry sound for miles, creating auditory ghosts. These scientific explanations are valid and sound, yet they fail to answer one crucial question. If it's just a mechanical or psychological anomaly, why does this phantom train appear only after the very last scheduled run of the night? Some have speculated that the phenomenon could be tied to secret testing movements, unscheduled equipment transfers kept off the official logs for security reasons. Others suggest it's a shared psychological artifact, a kind of modern folklore created and sustained by the unique pressures and isolation of night work. The story gets told, and soon others start to see what they expect to see. And then there's the rich history of American railway folklore itself, which is filled with countless stories of phantom trains. These tales are usually tied to tragic accidents, old forgotten routes, or famous retired locomotives. Most of these legends are symbolic, not meant to be taken literally. They represent the unstoppable momentum of routine, the idea that systems and schedules can somehow outlive the very people who created and operated them. In this modern version of the legend, the train isn't threatening. It doesn't seem to be the ghost of a terrible crash. It doesn't seek passengers. It doesn't derail. It doesn't announce its presence with a mournful whistle. It simply passes through as if it's dutifully completing a route that no longer exists on any map, following a schedule that no one remembers. Weeks after his first sighting, the cleaner found himself back at that same small station. He finished his work early and decided to wait. He sat on a bench, watching the dark, empty tracks. And then, at exactly 1:40 a.m., the rails began to hum. The headlights appeared in the distance. The train came again, but this time he was ready. He watched it closely as it approached, and he noticed something new, something he'd missed before. Every single passenger was facing directly forward. There were no phones in their hands, no hushed conversations, no one dozing against a window. There was just absolute uniform stillness. As the glowing cars rushed past him, he didn't feel fear. Instead, he felt a strange sense of certainty, of recognition. It felt as though the train and its silent passengers belonged to a different time, a parallel schedule that was still running right alongside the present. And then, just like before, it was gone. The next morning, the station opened as usual. Commuters rushed onto the platform, coffee in hand. The scheduled trains arrived, their doors hissed open, and life continued its normal, predictable rhythm. But among the small community of people who work the night shift, there is now an unspoken rule. If you're out there in the quiet hours and you see the last train, the one that doesn't stop, you don't signal it, you don't chase it, and you never ever try to board it. Because whatever schedule it's following, it's not yours anymore. Thanks for watching. If you have any stories like this one, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, be sure to follow for more strange tales.